Hi there. I know this looks totally ridiculous because it is. Yeah, it's me videotaping my hands typing on the keyboard of my laptop. But the reason I'm doing this is because I figured if anybody is going to accuse me of the entire movie being AI, if they're going to say the whole thing is AI came up with it, a computer wrote the movie, well, they'd be wrong because I wrote the movie, here I am writing the movie. I figured this would be the number one part that people would accuse me of being AI when it's really not. So here's video of me typing on my laptop. Really, all I'm doing here is typing out the original brain dump for the story, for my movie. I have the idea myself. I am the writer, I am the creator, and I thought of the whole movie while I was taking a walk right before I filmed this. And that's a whole conversation that we'll get into is how do you brainstorm? How do you come up with your ideas? I mean, I can tell you a couple ways that I like to do it. And one way is honestly just going for a walk, clearing your mind, not wearing any headphones. Don't, if you're going to be distracted by your phone, don't take it with you. Just go for a walk. A short walk, a long walk, whatever. Right before I filmed this, I just went for a walk to the grocery store, which is about, I don't know, 5-10 minutes away. And I just really concentrated, cleared my mind, and focused on what I wanted this movie to be. And a few things came up. I thought I wanted to be sort of like anime movies that I grew up with. Shows, really, things like Robotech, Star Blazers, and I thought as long as I'm genuine, I'm trying to make it like a movie from a past era. But if I do this in a genuine, sincere way and keep it sincere to this vision, this early to mid 80s retro anime vision, and also I'm not just thinking about the style, but I'm thinking about the plot. So I'm thinking about the story, and I'm thinking about it just has to be true to the kinds of stories that I remember watching and experiencing back then, which to me means that it doesn't have to be too serious as long as you're serious about it, if that makes any sense. You have to just believe in it. And again, this is another thing I tell myself is that, especially when you're doing this, when you're brain dumping and when you're writing just the general ideas out for your story, this is not a final script. You have to tell yourself that nothing is corny. It's okay for things to suck, honestly. Just write your ideas down. Your best ideas, don't waste time on ideas you don't like, but whatever your most passionate ideas are, whatever you feel the best about, just write it down. Even if you start to doubt yourself, if you start to second guess yourself, write it down anyway. Even if you think someone else is going to think it's bad or corny or not like it, who cares? You just have to go with what you like, go with your best ideas and write them down. Like I said, it's okay to be laughed at, it's okay to suck. People nowadays, they're going to say that about everything, so just expect it. But just write it down and get it down in this phase where it's the early brainstorming, brain dump idea phase. Not everyone is going to be able to take a 10-minute walk and come back with this much information. I understand that. But do what you gotta do. Go for an hour-long walk and then come back and write down one page. Write down half a page. Go for a 2-hour-long walk and come back and write down one paragraph. And keep on doing it until you fill that out to a page or 2 pages or 4 pages like I have here. Do what you gotta do, but I promise you, it's really easy the more you can just go clear your mind. If you're having a hard time, I can probably bet that it's because you're not able to undistract yourself from the modern day world and just clear your mind. Here's an exercise. You don't have to take a walk. This one actually works pretty good too. Just sit down, turn off the TV, turn off everything, turn off your phone, and just sit silently with your thoughts. And it might hurt at first. It might actually be painful. It might actually hurt. But hey, if it does, that means it's working. So sit down with your thoughts. This is when you think about your story. This is when you think about what you want to make your movie about. What do you have to say? What are your characters about? What do they look like? What are they doing? What's the point? What do you want to emulate? What kinds of stories do you like? What kinds of stories do you want to tell? It doesn't even have to be the greatest thing. It doesn't have to be mind blowing. It can just be some slice of life shit. You can just think, what's pleasant? What would you want to spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes watching? What kinds of stories, even if it's some low stakes stuff, just like, do you want to see some elves baking some cakes? I don't know. Maybe you do. Do you want to see some little halfling making desserts on a Sunday afternoon? Maybe you do. That's fine too. But just write down your ideas. Write them down, flush them out, get your characters out. And then what you do is you do this. You come and you just open up a Google Doc and you just start writing. And you write all your ideas down. And they don't have to be in any certain order. You don't have to categorize them. You don't have to itemize them. It is kind of helpful to say, here's the plot, here's the characters, here's the first scene. But if you start having detailed ideas, like the first scene is going to go this, and then this guy's going to jump through the window and say this, and then he's going to pull out the gun and point it in the other guy's face, and then his sister's going to run in. You know what? You can do that too. You can write all of that down. Just do that. Just write it all down. Especially if you start having detailed, long form, just even if it doesn't make sense, just start writing your scenes down. And you can make it all fit later. I promise you can. So that's what you do. You just start writing all this down. You start brain dumping. And I even have some pretty weird things I listened to here, like a song, a musical about mattresses. How does that even? But hey, that's what I thought about when I was walking on the street and I thought about this whole idea. I thought it would be really crazy to have something that ties into modern day life and to have a song about mattresses. And to me, that's actually kind of not necessarily an anime influence, but it's influenced from the movie Suicide Club, where the artist Raleigh, I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but there's a point in the spoiler alert. There's a point in the movie where the musical artist Raleigh, who's also an actor in the movie, just busts out in song and does this totally weird, like it just totally takes you out of the movie almost. But he goes into this song, and it's great because it's so jarring. It's great. Maybe something like that, but really this whole vibe of my anime, I'm thinking, is going to be very retro, very early 80s. And I'm talking about the experience of watching it dubbed that doesn't really make sense and a bad edit. So it's going to be some like serious spacefaring, interdimensional Lord of the Rings, but the guy's an alien, but he looks like an elf, but he's going to sort of be like a loser, but he's going to redeem himself by actually saving Earth from this collinear configuration, astrology bullshit. While doing all of that, he's going to fight the planets, which are gods, little g, and they're going to somehow realign themselves into what they are today. Anyway, in the course of all that, I think we have a pretty good story, or at least something to turn into a story, So I'm just dumping all of that right here. I'm just writing all of that down. Like I said, none of this is AI. It's all just my thoughts. It's 47 minutes of me writing 4 pages, and it's really not even close to fleshed out yet. I don't even have a name for the protagonist yet. It's still pretty raw. You want to take all of this down, you want to write it all down, and then eventually we're going to edit it and add to it. And that's going to be the next step. And then we're going to see what we can do by giving this to an AI. As you'll see, the more you have ready, the more you give, the more you get. The more we have prepared, the more we have figured out, the more we have written ourselves, to be honest, the easier it will be to get anything usable from an AI. I mean, that's really common sense, but if you didn't know that, that's the case. So we'll see that in the next step. We'll clean this up, we'll edit, we'll add to it, and we'll add a lot to it. Perhaps in step 3, actually, is when we're going to give this to an AI and flesh it out further. You'll see this is actually a very good start, just really having a basic idea of what the story is, who your characters are, and what it looks like. That's really important too. What the visual style is, what the characters look like. It doesn't have to be exact. You don't have to be super detailed, but just to have a general idea. What the backgrounds look like, what your environments are going to be like, animals, other characters, vehicles, anything like that. Anything visual that you're going to see on screen, you need to know what it looks like, or at least have a general idea. At least, even if you don't write it down, it's good to just be thinking about that and be able to just make a decision quickly and flesh it out. Even if you've never thought about it, just having the ability to go, oh, let's go with this, and to be able to on the spot make that decision and think about it and go, yeah, hey, I didn't really think about that, but what makes sense is it's going to be in a desert. I mean, you'll probably know the basics. You'll probably have thought about the basics, like what the environment will be, what the planet looks like, where if is it in space, underwater, what's going on. You'll have figured that out via the story, I'm sure, but any other specifics, you'll be able to, like if it's just a regular love story and you haven't thought about what city it's going to be in, you should probably be able to just kind of think about it for a minute or two and figure out, hey, it's going to be in this part of the country. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. But being able to make these decisions quickly and have them flow with the rest of your story and with your general aesthetic and with the rest of your script, that's strong. Being able to mentally organize your story and have it be cohesive. Again, you don't have to be a mental master. You don't have to be a genius and be able to have. You don't have to have a photographic memory to be able to keep all of this straight. And if it helps to write it down, by all means, write it down. You don't have to do it exactly like this either. If you want to come to this step with notes, then definitely do that. A lot of people do that. So you see me here, just going for a walk, thinking up some crazy ideas, and then jotting them down here. You can do that. Or you can jot down your ideas over months and then come to this step where you put them all into a Google Doc. It doesn't matter, whatever you want to do, however you want to organize it or come to it. But yeah, or you can do that. You can just build this doc, just type all of your ideas straight into a Google Doc just like this. But you can take as long as you want to do it. You can do it over the course of 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever it takes you. Just get your ideas down. Just get your ideas down and get them into a Google document like this. And that's where we're going to be with the next step. So at this point, we're really building out our world. We're really laying the groundwork for our story and building the planet, the background, the environment, the circumstances that our story lives in and our characters live in. We're thinking of those kinds of things. You can even think of things like how do they get around? What is their method of transportation? What is the power scaling system in this world? Is there a magic system? What is the flora and fauna? Is it a science fiction? Is it a horror? What is the backstory? If it's a horror, what is the lore? What is the backstory of your supernatural entity, of your haunted area, of your monster? What is going on there? Why does it matter? Why is it different? Those are the kind of things that really make stories interesting, right? So that's probably what you should be thinking about here when you lay down these random details and this really general outline here. Really, what this is sort of a treatment. It's basically just a general one sheet, but think of it like a 4 or 5 sheet that is the general idea of your story. You should also be thinking about hooks. Just one little snippet, like snakes on a plane. That's a hook. A hook is basically a short little premise that you can verbally say to someone that will get them hooked. But that's all a movie is sometimes. It's just a good hook that is developed into an entire story. So at this point, you should be thinking of hooks, multiple hooks. Hooks that set up your story, hooks that set up your characters, your world, what happens, why people should be interested, what is the story about, why should people care to go on this ride. And then from those hooks, from those ideas, develop characters, stories, backgrounds, environments, worlds, towns, whatever you have to do, whatever you have to do to fill in the blanks. So at this point, we're really just organizing our ideas and throwing down the most general outline. We're trying to get everything that we can recorded down in this document. With that said, even at this point, one thing that's going to help you out a lot is just organizing your story and building your story within some sort of structure. And this structure can be anything. It can be a simple 3-act structure. It can be Save the Cat. It can be Glengar's 6 Questions. It can be anything. There are many different ways to structure your story, and I highly recommend that you study these ways and these typical algorithms is what they are that are used to organize and tell stories. Typically, Hollywood scripts are written with these structures in mind, and I would highly recommend studying these different ways of writing a script and telling a story. So once you have that in mind and you are throwing your ideas down, just start thinking of ways and just start thinking of different beats that are going to occur in your story as per these different story structures. And, like I said, it can be, if you're doing Glengar's 6 Questions, then just, ask yourself, who is the story about? What are they trying to get? Why can't they get it? Things like that. When you study storytelling, you're going to realize that a lot of it just comes down to obstacles. Your story can't be too simple. It can't be the hero gets the prize and end of story. Then you wouldn't have a story, right? So you have to have stakes, typically high stakes. But you have to have your story mean something. You have to have failure. You have to have obstacles. You have to have parts where the hero's journey goes off the rails. And he or she comes up against really hard problems to manage. So think of it in terms of stakes, in terms of what's happening in your story that is preventing your protagonist from getting what they want. A lot of times in a story, this happens over and over again. Your protagonist comes up against a problem, they defeat it, they come up against another problem, the problem kicks their ass, then they defeat that problem. So really look at it in terms of stakes, problems, obstacles to your hero's journey. Once you start writing like that, you'll realize that you have a story a lot quicker than you did before. And your story's a lot more interesting too. Now, if you didn't have anything before, if you're just going from scratch and building ideas like we are here, you'll know that this is a quick way to get to an interesting story. Your audience will be much more invested when there's more on the line. So as you can see here, we already have 14 different beats in this story. And this doesn't really correspond to Save the Cat exactly, but that's actually what Save the Cat is. It's about 14 different plot points, kind of like this, that makes up a typical Hollywood story. So, you know, this is what I'm saying. You don't have to go strictly by any certain plot structure, but it's good just to have different story structures in mind. So when you're laying down your ideas like this, that you at least are laying them down in a way that's cohesive and makes sense from the beginning, or at least tries to make sense. So at this point, we don't have a completely finished story outline, but it's pretty close. We're going to edit this and add to it and see what we get.